welcome, folks. This is the Builder Showcase again, and we took a little time off during the summer, and Elaine had some things going on. I had some things going on, but we're back in all our glory. And I'm just going to go ahead and turn it over to Elaine because she's the one that runs this. So, Elaine, you just take it over. You can go ahead and introduce our guest of honor / victim for the night.
I will. And I tell you, it's good to be back, and I've made a lot of friends doing this. Hopefully, you all have sort of met each other and made friends too. I'm really excited tonight because it's a little. Well, we had several that were different. I envisioned everybody to show up and have a video of their guitar and talk about it. And boy, we had all kind of things. Steve, you compared the guitars, and some that most of us wouldn't have even made. Peter, you had a variety of things, and you talked to us. We've had all kind of stuff. But tonight it's another just whole different topic. And so Gary Hersch is going to talk to us about his building arch tops. And it's the best thing of the whole Builder Showcase is I get to talk to my interviewee or victim, as Robbie said, before this, and I get to ask a lot of questions, and we laugh a lot. And I tell you, there's lots of things that I think you'll want to think about and ask Gary questions, from drilling little holes so he can carve the thing to how he got that blue guitar to be blue. And I will tell you, we've changed a few things about the Builder Showcase. First off, sometimes you may wonder, well, there's only a few of us. Is this worthwhile? Well, Robbie's getting about 450 views of these videos, so people are watching them. They just, I don't know, maybe they're just lurking and not willing to get on with all of us, or it's bad timing, but people do watch it, so it is a value. And another thing that we'd like to do is, I think they're going to not always just focus on a guitar like you'll see me start to advertise. Let's have one night where perhaps people play their guitars and we just listen to them. Perhaps we have another night where we show cool fixtures and jigs we've built. So we start to share more in a group environment, along with having a spotlight. And so Gary has started out building arch tops, and Gary, if it's okay with you, the format I'd like to follow is I'll bring up some slides and kind of talk about how you got into this and some of your first builds. When you're ready to go on the arch tops, we'll play the video of the blue ones that you sent me, and then we'll start talking about building. And I've got a huge Google album of pictures, and we'll pick the ones we want and pop them up and let Gary talk about them. So with that, Gary, if you want to start sort of talking about my first slide is going to be your logo. So if you want to start with just a little about you, what that logo is going to mean when I get it up, then we'll be good to go. So it's all yours.
All right, great. Thank you. Thanks, Elaine. Thanks, Robbie, for having me, and thanks for all your coursework too. Really, it started me on a whole new addiction, which is a great thing to do. So this little logo came about. I got into building instruments not too long ago. It was 2018, 2019. I'd started doing a little woodworking around the house, and I found a woodworking club here in the San Fernando Valley. I'm in suburban Los Angeles, and this club meets once a month at a local park. I mean, now it's all online, but then it was at a local park, and part of every meeting they do a show and tell where people can bring in projects that they're working on or they've completed. And this one fateful evening, a gentleman brought in a dulcimer he had built and talked about the process of building the dulcimer. And then he shared a little bit more that he had built several different instruments, several different kinds of instruments, and he started documenting it. And if anybody was interested in learning, he was more than happy to share it. And my hand went up by itself, I think. I'm not sure if he really knew anybody would take him up on his offer, but I certainly did. And it turned out that Tom is a retired school teacher, so he was just the ideal person, and he walked me through building a ukulele. And when it got time to close the ukulele, he told me I had to figure out a maker's label to put in there. And so right now, currently, for the past 10, 15 years or so, I've worked in corporate America. But prior to that, this is really my second career. Prior to that, I had a whole nother career. I'm a classically trained chef. I worked in some of the finest restaurants in LA. I owned a catering company for a number of years. I was showing Elaine up on my wall over here. I have an autographed menu from it was probably the coolest party I ever catered. It was a baby shower for David Crosby's wife at Graham Nash's house. And I was able to get Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young to autograph this menu for me. It was just the coolest thing. But what happened, and I think why I took the woodworking so well, is, working in corporate America, working at a desk is, there's some creativity involved, but you're not building things like food, right? You don't get that gratification from the product. And so woodworking, in woodworking, I've discovered a new outlet for that creativity. And so I came up with the logo, Chef Works Instruments, using the chef's knife for the eye. And this is kind of a work in progress. And I told you, Lynn, what I was going to do here is have her put it up and then ask for ideas on how to incorporate a logo like this onto a headstock. Because I haven't figured that out. It's a little bit beyond my inlay capabilities, I think, cutting all of that out. But I'd like to get something like that into a headstock. But that's the story of the logo and the story of the maker's name is Chef Works Instruments, because in a previous life, that was my living. So this is the ukulele that I built. That's actually the ukulele on the two pictures on the right. And then what happened was after the ukulele was complete, my wife was out of town for work for about a week. I waited till I knew she was going out of town. And then I'd already discovered online Robbie's website. So I waited till she was gone. And then I ordered the classical guitar course and the kit from LMI. And so I built the guitar. You can see there on the left, that's the front and the back. And it really came out nice. I mean, I watched that course. One of my favorite things about the courses on the website is you don't have to download everything to your computer, and there's no limit to the number of times you can watch it. And I am very much a visual learner. So I will, watch the video, and I also have a very short memory. So I'll watch the video, I'll get halfway through the process, and I'll go back and I'll watch it again and whatnot. And I'm able to do that the way his website is set up. And it really makes it, and you all know this, I'm sure, a very easy process. The way Robbie teaches, it's really simple to follow along in the lessons and come out with a successful build, which I've been able to do a number of times now.
Well, thank you, Gary. This is starting to sound like an advertisement for me, but
Yeah.
this is all about you tonight, man.
You can send a check or a T-shirt, either way.
So, Gary, did you start after you built the classical? How many classicals did you build, and then what got you into building arch tops? We'll get right onto the arch tops. Sure.
So I built 3 of the classicals. I still have the first one I built, and the other 2, I say I sold them to friends, but really they paid for the wood and I did the building. I don't know that my skill level is at such a level where I feel comfortable for charging, but at least this way I can finance my habit a little bit. And because it's not an inexpensive habit, but I built the 3 classicals, and I don't listen to a lot of classical guitar music. I don't play a lot of classical guitar music. And even though I love the way it sounds, it's a little awkward in my hand. It's a very wide neck. And that, and combined with, I love the way archtop guitars look, and I love the way they sound. I'm not a player, but I still love the way they sound. And I saw that course, and I figured, why the hell not? It's the worst can happen. I just make some firewood, right? And so I bought that course, and that one's not quite as prepackaged as the classical course, in that there's no kit from LMI to build. So you kind of have to source the parts and the materials solo, which, having done the classical stuff, I got very familiar with LMI, familiar with Stu Mack, through the GAL. I joined the Guild of American Luthiers pretty early through their magazine. I found some other suppliers, and I was able to come up with, the supplies to build the first classical, which is what you're seeing here.
The first arch top, you mean, not classical?
The first arch top.
Yep. So this was your first one here, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
All right.
So it didn't come out. The color wise, it's good. It's not great. I mean, it's not quite as poppy yellow as the one that Juan builds in the course, but I'm pretty pleased with it. You know, it's the first time I made a cutaway. It's the first time I made any kind of carving at all ever. It's the first time I've dyed wood or used the classical course is all French polish. That one was French polished too on top of the dye. But a lot of firsts, and it's the first time building that or bending that cutaway is talk about pucker factors that Robbie always talks about. That's quite the feat too.
So if you don't mind here, I'm going to play. Now this is the blue guitar, and this is your second or third one.
Second arch top.
Okay, and so let's listen to one of these so people know what we're talking about here. Now, I'm going to stop this a second. Turns out, tell them who the fella is that's playing this guitar. This is an interesting thing.
Oh, so this is funny. This is so like I said, I live in suburban Los Angeles in the San Fernando Valley. And some folks moved in across the street about 5-6 months ago. And when they first moved in, my wife met the guy on her way to work, and she said, "Well, what do you do for a living?" He said, "Well, I work at Fender Guitars." So he's an exec at Fender. He does all their artist relations, all their signature guitars for all their artists. So we've had this immediate kinship. And I got Mike to play the guitar for me. Like I said, I'm not a big player. I'm starting to learn, but Mike, agreed to demo this guitar for me for this presentation.
So we've got a couple of
Elaine, just real quick before you get started, on my end, I see a gray screen over a picture behind there. Now, I heard the audio when you started it, but I have no video of that.
Well, let's see if he'll start. If it doesn't, Robbie, I'll start it back.
I think I had to click a button on my end or something at one time. Yeah, I hear the audio, but I have no video for that.
Okay, let me restart that then.
And same here, just so you know.
Okay. Oh, thanks for letting me know. Okay, here, share sound, video.
There was some button you had to click on your end. I think last time.
I think I've got it clicked, but we'll see if it'll bring it up this time.
There it is. We got it.
All right, good deal. All right. So I've got, he's playing the same song, and this is the clip where he's amplified. We'll play it, and then we'll play the same song, and he's not, so you can hear the difference. And I will start it over. And if it's okay, we'll go ahead and I'll play the non-amplified clip. I believe that is this one.
That first one you just played was amplified then, right?
Yeah.
Yes, that's correct.
I was plugged into a little Winters amp, I think.
Let's see, in this one, this is just the raw recording. There's a little black background noise, I think, but so there we go. Yeah. Gary, I'm going to call up the walnut spruce pictures, and we start talking about your builds, and you can talk some about start answering questions however you want to handle it. So let me get that one up next.
Sure. And the nice thing about that I really like about these guitars is, I'm not sure what you all think, but I think they sound really well. They sound really great, both amplified and acoustic. I mean, I told you I'm not really a player. One of the questions I always get asked when I tell people that I'm learning to build guitars, they say, "Well, you play too, don't you?" And I got tired of answering that by saying, "Well, yeah, but just not very well." So I started taking lessons, and I'm taking lessons over Skype with a guy who lives up in the Central Coast in California, and I use the blue guitar in my lessons. And this guy who's been playing music for years and years, he tells me, he says that's one of the loudest jazz boxes he's ever heard.
So now these photographs in this album are of a walnut guitar that you built for someone, and you said you took a lot of pictures as you built it, so that they would sort of have a record of it. So
right. So
how thick is that blank we're looking at in this first picture?
So the blank starts out at about an inch thick in the middle, and then it goes down to a little over a quarter inch on the ends.
Okay.
And my question to Gary is, how did you thickness that sucker? Did you do it the old-fashioned way by hand?
Well, yeah. So it comes, pretty well thick because it comes at that 1 inch, and then I actually took it to a friend of mine who's got a nice resaw bandsaw, and we thinned out the edges of it to that quarter inch, but the rest of it is all hand planed. It's all shaping it.
Yeah, and then the shaping and carving. Then you did with a hand plate method, or did you use the Arbortech thing that we show in the video?
No, it's all. If you look on that, Elaine, if you stop a second, go back up the. Looks like the second picture from the right. You can see the two hand planes there.
Yep, I see them there. Yeah.
There you go.
Yep.
So all the cards. So just as a kind of point of reference, I weighed this the blank out before I started, and I believe it was like 4.5, 5 pounds.
Oh, wow.
And by the time I was done carving, it was just about a pound.
That's a lot of wood to remove.
And all that wood removal was done with those little planes.
Good for you.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Hours wise, how long did that take you?
The first one took a lot longer than the second one. It probably takes, I was telling Elaine, she asked me the same thing. It took a good week working nights and weekends after work.
You probably got 20, 30 hours in that then.
Yeah, no, not quite that long. I'd say probably closer to 8 to 10. And the thing I found, so this is the third guitar that I built, the third arch top that I built. And, as you said, the top on this one is spruce. The back is walnut. On the first one, and through the videos, Juan has you carve I'm a real big believer in following instructions, right? At least until you get a handle on the way things go. And so I followed the instructions pretty well. In that first video, he talks about doing the spruce top first and then the maple back. That first guitar I built, that yellow one you saw, and the blue one also, are spruce tops with maple back and sides. And carving maple compared to carving spruce, oh my God. It's just, I would sharpen my planes, at least every other day, if not daily, and it still tears up your hands. I mean, by the end, I had gloves on and my fingertips wrapped with tape and Band-Aids, and I'd still got these monster blisters from that, from the maple. But carving the walnut compared to the maple is such a pleasure. You might want to stop there.
Okay.
I'll just scroll back down a little bit. Let's look at the one with all the holes in it and the one next to it.
That looks like the one you took out to the range and sighted in your rifle or something. Huh?
Let me call this one up first.
Right. So
start here.
So actually, go. Let's start with one of the other side of the back. The top side, the outside of the back is all the way on the left. Okay. No, just all the way on the left, same row. There
this
you
one.
go.
Okay.
So here the outside of the back is contoured, right? All the shape is carved into it, and it's pretty much where it needs to be, except for some final sanding and scraping. But when you flip it over, the back of it, the inside of it is still flat. So the trick then is, how do you carve that contour into the inside of it and not go all the way through it, right? How do you know when to stop? And so the way Juan shows us on the video, you can see right there in the center, then we can pull that one up. This is a little jig that you build for a drill press. In the base, it's just a little dowel with a cork top on it. And you set the drill press, so you gap it out at 7/32 of an inch. And then you put the outside of the back on the cork, and you just pop your holes randomly all the way through. So now that you have that 7/32 gap of wood, in each hole. And so when you go to carve, you just stop carving when you get to the bottom of the hole, right? And that teardrop shape there is in the middle, just is from the post of the drill press. You couldn't get the blank in any further there, but there's enough guidance from all the other holes, from all the shotgun, as Robbie says, to help guide you. Make sense?
Yep.
Yes.
Cool.
You can see it right above that picture there, Elaine, just all the pile of shavings. It's kind of, I love that picture, just as it's kind of like, it shows all the work you went through. There's the big pile. And what's really neat about this is I do a lot of gardening. My wife won't let me do any composting. She's afraid of rats, but I have friends in the neighborhood that do a lot of composting. So I've just gotten to saving all those shavings. And when I'm done with the guitar, you get a 5-pound bag full or 10-pound bag full of shavings.
Wow.
To garden.
What's your target thickness for the back?
It is, I want to say, in the middle. Well, the back, it's all about 4 mil. And then on the top, in the middle section of the top, it's about 6 millimeters, if I remember correctly, in the middle section, and then more like 3.5 to 4 millimeters on the edges. Here you can see the top being carved.
How often did you have to sharpen that plane, Gary, when you were working that top and back?
Just about once a day.
Okay.
Well, it wasn't too bad. I tell you, the trick with the plane is getting the blade in the right position and keeping it in the right position. That's where there's just a lot of fine adjustments and things that, and it makes all the difference if you tap it once or twice. It can make a huge difference. And then really getting a feel for the wood in the direction in which it likes to be carved. And because we're dealing a lot with curly woods, not so much on the spruce, but on the maple or on the walnut, you're dealing with a lot of figure. There's different sections of the top like to be carved in different directions, and that is the more I do this, the better I get at reading it like that.
So, want more pictures of the holes and
yeah, there's I think you want me to talk about the safety planner.
Yeah, that'd be great. Let's see if we come to that photo yet.
We must have, because we're at the edges. So what happens after, we'll scroll back up a bit.
All right.
Right there. Oh, you just passed it.
All right. I think I'm ahead of you just a little bit, maybe.
No, you're.
No.
You can stop for a second if you want. We can talk about. So, Peter, I think you asked about the thickness, and one thing one thing I've learned from my wife is how to be cheap. Robbie's got that fancy dialed caliper that if you go on eBay or whatnot, you can get probably the junky ones for about $70, $80, and the expensive ones for $200. Here, what I did is I went. I think I found this idea. I think on the forum, just going to a tire store and buying a digital tire gauge, and then I built this little throat thing here and inserted the gauge in there, and that's what I use for my caliper. And that I'm not building professional grade guitars, so it's close enough for government work. It gives me an idea where I need the thickness, more, and how to get to the thickness, the right thickness that I want.
Let's see if I can find this. Here it is. There we
There.
go. Yeah.
So with the shaping of the outside, the rough shaping of the outside, once you get everything roughed out, one of the things Jelan talks about in the video is using the safety planer to create a ledge that you don't want to carve past. And it's interesting on a couple levels. One is just learning how to, use the safety planer. Not just, it's one thing to use the planer to just thicken sides, right? That's pretty straightforward. When you're going from 5 millimeters down to 4 millimeters, it's not such a big thing. But in this case, where you're not only trying to, get to a target thickness, but also maintain that shape and maintain the perimeter, it's a little trickier. And one of the things Elaine asked me the other day was, what's one of the things I've learned through this whole process? And as much as anything else, it's patience. It's something that I tell the people who work for me, to learn how to go fast is you go slow, right? To slow down and do it once, to do it right. Because the first time I tried this on my first guitar, I'm just trying to, set the safety planer at a certain depth and then trying to shove the wood in there and get it to go was a pain in the ass, quite frankly. And what I've learned is to take smaller bites, to take shallower bites, and to do it more than once, and to go for accuracy rather than speed. And when I'm getting frustrated by it, to step away from it for a bit and then come back to it, and it really works out well. The one thing I wish I had here is, as Juan talks about a friend of his in Brazil who has a 6-bladed version of the safety planer. And I've contacted this person on more than one occasion, and he's always out of stock. And I wish, maybe Robbie, on one of your trips down there, you can pick up a couple and get them to us. But
yeah, who you're talking about is Miguel Cardone. He has a company called Music Tools in Brazil.
Yes.
And the COVID thing just about wiped him out because all of his suppliers went out of business.
Wow.
And besides the suppliers going out of business, the price of aluminum and brass and steel and everything, tripled. So he's having a real tough time right now keeping things in stock.
I bet. Yeah. And I can certainly empathize, but still, if you go down there and you find them, let me know.
Okay.
All right. So you click on the picture on the right, to the right of the safety planner.
Okay. The first or second? The first one?
There you go. Yep, right there.
Okay.
So this is kind of cool. So with the safety planer, you really create 2 ledges, and it's to help in the final carving. And what's cool is, as you're carving, to make these ledges disappear and to make it one smooth surface. I mean, that is just I like doing things where I get a sense of accomplishment at the end of the day, and that is when you get that ledge to disappear, both those ledges to disappear, and you just have one nice curve. That's really cool. The other thing I was going to say about this photo, this is probably the part of the guitar that has given me the most trouble so far. So what we're looking at here is the top plate, and where the neck is going to join the top. And what's tricky here is when you connect the neck, the neck joins to the top of the guitar with a mortise and tenon dovetail joint, and the neck becomes, or the fingerboard has an extension that goes over the neck, probably about 3 or 4 inches. And so the trick is to carve this portion of the top flat enough so that you can slide that neck in there and still get it to float a little bit. So it's not touching all the way down, and still have room enough to put in a pickup at the bottom of the neck. What happened on the first one I carved, I didn't know that. And when I talk about patience, I got to the point where the shape looked right, even though I was using the profile templates that come with the plans. I was allowing myself some poetic license, if you will. and wasn't.
Gary, let's see if we can find a photo of what you're talking about with that neck. Do you know if there's one on down in here in the assembly?
The better, no, maybe, yeah, keep going. Keep going.
Okay.
Getting closer. Okay, so here's talking. If you want to just look at the neck, the mortise and tenon joint there. We scroll up a bit.
All right.
Just a little bit more. Next row up.
All right.
So this is
There we
getting
go.
to that point. So Robbie through LMI has his neck angle jig, and again, me being Mr. Cheap, I built it on my own. And so here's a version of the tenon cutting jig that I built, and you can't really see it here, but underneath where all these clamps are is a piece of wood that has a 4.5-degree angle cut into it with a little pin that the truss rod slot fits over, and then what you see right in the middle there is the neck portion waiting to be trimmed away by the router. And then the next picture over, Elaine, there is the top being flattened out to receive the top of the guitar to receive the neck, to receive the mortise, and then the picture next to it shows the template for cutting the mortise. And so, one of the things that Robbie is want to talk about in the video is, the benefits of doing a bunch of test cuts, doing some 2x4s and really making sure you have your angle and your template and everything dialed in. And I did I'd say probably about 8 or 10 of those. And what I learned after the first one is I just cut off on the test neck. I cut off the top where I carved the thing in, and it wasn't the tenon, and it wasn't correct. And then I super glued another piece on there and carved that. And when that didn't work, I just knocked it off and shoved another one on there till I got the tenon how I wanted it. I kind of played around with different templates. And then I got smart for my next guitar. I actually bought the templates from LMI. So those should dial in relatively quickly. But it was a fun process. But if you go down to the next row, Elaine, you can see this is fitting the neck on without the fingerboard extension. The picture you just had up on the left, the very one on the left. Right, so this is just the neck blank without the fingerboard glued onto it. And what happens is that fingerboard is going to drop about 3 or 4 inches down there. And in order for it to fit properly and correctly, this portion of the neck has to be relatively flat. On this guitar, it did come out fairly well. On the first one I built, there was the contours of the neck. It was still curved a great deal in here. So when you see my first, if we were to bring up that yellow guitar, you'll see there's no pickup at the base of the neck. And because the reason is there was no room, I had to carve away so much of that under part of the fingerboard in order to get the neck to fit.
So Gary, you've done some interesting things with your fixturing to handle the neck joint. And if we can find those again, I'd like to show them. Do you recall where those are? Are they in this set or the other set?
I think it's up a bit. Is the one fixture you were talking about? Back up to where we right there. Oh, you just passed it.
All right. Let's see which one.
Well, there you can see up top, just right above where you are, is the bender that I built. Oh, right there. So again, this is my version of the LMI Fox style bender, just with clamps and 2x4s carved to fit the waist and then the cutaway. And then when for doing the other side, I just have some wood that fits in here. So I just have the one mold for this size guitar.
This is where this mold starts. It's very interesting.
Right.
If you want to talk about what you've done.
Right. So I kind of, on my second and third guitar, I kind of, I took what Jean had instructed for the mold and I modified it a bit. What I was finding is when I was, when you're bending the wood, the side is going to be longer than you actually need. And if the way Juan has the mold constructed, the split in the mold comes out at the center of the top of the guitar, right? And so I would have to cut this piece off right about here and kind of guesstimate where I needed to cut it off. What I like to do after I bent the side, especially with the cutaway, is let it sit in the mold overnight. So when I made the second mold, I modified it so that the cutaway side and the non-cutaway side joined right here rather than in the center. And I have the center of the guitar marked on the mold. You can see my center line right here. So that was one little modification that I put in that, you know, seems to work well for me. I think the other one you wanted to show, Elaine, was the binding cutting jig that I had.
I do. I did want to show that. I'll show that in a bit when we get out of this album. It's in a well, I can do it right now.
Well, you know what? The other thing we wanted to talk about, Elaine, what you wanted to talk about the cradles, right?
Yeah.
So one of the tricky things about doing, you know, carving the arch top, especially, see here you can see the yellow guitar doesn't have a pickup.
Yeah.
The pickup free zone. So one of the things about carving the guitar is how do you hold the top and the back when you're trying to carve the inside piece, right? And so I think Juan got this from Bob Benedetto. And if you look in his book, he talks about this as well, is you cut out a rough shape of the guitar and then cut out these lips that are about an inch thick and glue them down. And then line those with cork. And then underneath, it attaches to just a pipe. It's I think a 2-inch pipe or a 1-inch pipe that I hold in my vise. And what's nice about these that I've learned to do is not only do they work well for holding the top and the back while you're carving, but they also become clamping calls when you're clamping the top to the rims and the back to the rims. So you use these they've already got the cork lining on there. You just gotta have some wide mouth clamps, but they work really, really well as clamping calls. And then you'll see they also work well for binding. The picture on the left here is, you know, when I was building the classical guitars and my ukulele also, I used a Dremel with the Stumac attachment to cut the binding channels. And I just knew that wasn't going to work well on cutting the bindings on the arch top, just because of the shape, and I wanted something, you know, steadier to hold it. And at the same time, they sell that really fancy jig through LMI and other places. But I found some places on YouTube where they showed how to build one of these things using some drawer slides, springs, and just a little platform. And that's what I wound up doing. The only modification I've made to this jig since I built it is I've trimmed the size of the platform, because with these longer corners, I was having trouble over some of the arches. It wasn't quite getting in to the grooves deep enough. But what's really cool is it's on those springs, so it really contours the shape and the arches of the guitar. And then what I was able to do, I think Elaine's looking for the picture, is I modified these cradles. I put some brackets in kind of 4 corners, and I used the cradle to hold the guitar as I'm pushing it through the binding cutting jig.
Yeah, I don't see where those words are.
Right there.
Okay. Yeah, there we go. Yep.
So here you can see the modified platform for the router, and then I've got 4 of these little things that I just attach. I drilled some holes into the sides of the cradles and put some T-nuts and some long screws with wing nuts, and it works well to keep the guitar steady. And it's not as ultra level as like the LMI jigs, but because of the arch top, you don't really need it to be that ultra level. But in the way the thing floats here, so it's worked out fairly well.
So Gary, I'd like to move over to where you should talk about the blue guitar and how you got that finish on there. I guess the first one, you look at what this walnut one looked like at the end. I think we'll have a picture of it probably at the bottom here.
Sure. So one of the one of the makers I've discovered through building and all this is a guy named Ken Parker. And I don't know if you're familiar with Ken Parker, but he's like one of the godfathers of archtops. His stuff shows up, I think, in the Smithsonian, and he's got a series right now online called Archtoppery, where he talks about the various aspects of the build, including the finish. And so for this guitar, I followed the method that he put out, and it was basically doing. He calls it a primer coat. It's really a pore fill of two-part epoxy, West Systems epoxy. Applying that really thin, wiping it off as best as possible, and then about, I think, 10 or 12 coats of True Oil, and that's it. And it goes on very easily. It goes on relatively quickly, and especially with this guitar set up with the walnut and the spruce, it just came out. I think it came out beautiful, and the person who wound up with it up in Washington really is enjoying it too. What's kind of neat about this the Google Photos. I don't know if anybody's ever done this. I was telling a friend of mine about the guitar I was about to build, and she wanted to buy it for her husband. And I told her, well, this is the way I'm doing it. I'm just somebody wants it, you just pay for the materials, and there you go. And she agreed to do that. But what I did was the whole process through. I take pictures and I put them in Google Photos, and then I shared the album with her, so she's able to watch the process of the build the whole way through. So that was kind of neat. But this is, this was kind of neat too, because I made, I think the blue one also, I made my own purflings and bindings with this. You can see I was able to get the neck to float nicely. You can see the gap between the lower part of the fingerboard and the top. That's the floating top, and it, again, it's a bit of a struggle, but it's very cool.
Let's move over, because I'd like to have some time for questions at the end, to the blue guitar, and as I scroll through these, you'll see again the holes, the same. This is a picture of where you have your pipe on the holding fixture, and then that pipe is clamped, and you can just turn the whatever you're working on around. That was a great idea. And this one shows some of the bracing. So how's the bracing different on one of these than what we're used to on our steel strings?
So twofold. One is, you can see there's just two braces. And for arch tops, the braces are going to be in an X pattern like you see here, or they're going to be parallel. And the tricky part about, when you're fitting bracing on a classical guitar, and I imagine on a steel string, it's very similar. You kind of pop the thing in the go bar deck, and you put your glue on, and you put your go bar things on there, and you're done. Here, Elaine, I think if you scroll up just a little bit,
Okay.
Right there. On the stop right there that you're on. So fitting these braces on, you're fitting a curved surface to a curved surface. And in order for the braces to be effective, you have to have contact pretty much throughout the whole thing. You don't want any gaps at all. And so it's chalk fitting is the way that Juan shows in the videos. That, again, for me, it's an exercise in patience, because you really learn the meaning of I told you I used to cook for a living. There's a chef here in LA who used to have a sign famously in her kitchen that said, "Good enough isn't." And that's kind of what this represents. You can't get the braces where they're good enough. They really do have to be perfect. It's the only thing, that's supporting the top, and it's what's going to support, your sound quality as well. And so what you do is you cover that whole, first you rough cut out the shape of the brace, and then you cover the area in a colored chalk. I didn't get as creative with the pink as Robbie does in the video, but then you rub the brace over the chalk. You see where the chalk is on the brace, and you shave that away. And it's wash, rinse, repeat as many times as it takes until you get chalk over the whole length of that brace. And then you're good enough to sand, and you do some finish sanding, and you do the whole process again. But you get to a point where everything is fitted perfectly.
So Gary, I'll just ask, talk to us about tapping that top while you're working on the braces and while you're carving it. How is that?
But I'm still. I'd be lying if I said I had a trained ear, but I'm getting to the point where I can tap and I can hear differences in the sound, and I can hear what's starting to sound good. I think I'm more dependent at this point still on the caliper than I am on my ears, but I'm getting there. I can definitely hear the difference when I'm just tapping soundboards and stuff for flat tops to start with what's a good quality board and what's not. It's just it's a work in progress. Right.
So talk to us about how you got that guitar to be blue. It's an interesting story, and this is sort of the sequence of events
Sure.
that are shown here.
This video I keep talking about Juan's video, but I get help not just from that one, but also from the Kent Everett video for doing the fretwork, which was very, very helpful. And then here I accessed the Jeff Jewett's videos on sunbursts and that. And what I did was I I think it's more really relevant on the back than it is on the top, but it was putting an undercoat or two of black dye, and I use the Transtint dyes, and then sanding that away. So there's just kind of some highlights of the wood. You can see on the right there where it's sanded away. In fact, there you go. You can see on the back where it's really starting to highlight some of the figure in the wood. And then once that's sanded away, going over it with the blue.
You want to tell us about this picture?
And then what happened was I noticed some places where the dye just really wasn't taking so well. And I went over it, and the blue just wasn't showing up. So I took a photo and I sent it to Jeff. And I said, hey, what's going on here? And like without missing a beat, he said, that's glue. Sand it all the way back, get rid of the glue and do it again. And that's what I did. And he was right. It's one of the things I've learned about the LMI maker's glue is that it shows up under black light. And it turns out my stepson had a little black light flashlight, so I was able to get rid of all the glue remnants.
Here's your finished product.
Yep.
So, what was your finish once you got the tints going?
Once I finished with the dye, I just used the rattle can lacquers from Stu Mac. And I don't really have space or money to set up a spray booth or that equipment, but the spray lacquers from Stu Mac, they seem to work really, really well. And I just work in a garage, so I open the garage door, so I've got plenty of ventilation, cross ventilation, and I haven't had any issues. I'm still breathing, so.
So let me open up the floor to questions. We've got about 10 minutes to go here, and so let you all just chat about this. I think I might have muted everybody because we were getting some background noise. So if you will unmute yourself, we'll just have a conversation.
I got a quick question for you, Gary.
Sure.
Have you got another one on the bench?
I've got it on the. I've got all the parts, and it's just sitting in my garage aging right now, and I'll probably start that project in about a month.
Okay.
And that's going to your neck of the woods in Colorado.
Oh, good. Elaine, I don't know what you just did, but you just expanded that little gray area that's up on the right-hand corner there.
Yep,
and it
that
made it
one
larger.
right there.
Yep, there you go. We could totally get rid of it. That'd be great.
I can get rid of it. It's my gallery showing.
So,
and I'll go back and
shades of gray, wouldn't
it? Yeah. So I'll go back and get any photos we want once you all tell me what you want. Somebody else. What's another question? So I have a question, Gary. How long does it take you to build one of these? Granted, it's not your full-time job, but what's the general timeline?
About 100 hours total, give or take.
That's actually pretty good for the first couple of guitars, especially
Sure.
art tops. So as you proceed and start making more of these things, that obviously that number is going to come down. So way to go.
So Gary, the question I have is the mortise and tenon.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a bolt-on?
No.
How do you reach it?
What do you mean?
How do you reach it to put the bolts in?
It's not a bolt-on.
Oh, it's not.
Yeah. No, there's no way to do a bolt-on. just for that reason. Unless
Okay.
you're going to do like one of the old style oval hole arch tops, like the Gibson L5s, I think that'd be the only way to do something like that.
Did you do a straight mortise and tenon or actual angled dovetail?
It was supposed to be an angled dovetail, but for some reason the router bit wasn't making the angle. I'm not quite sure what's going on there, but so it's slightly angled.
Okay.
But it's well glued.
It's well glued, yeah.
I remember, and Robbie, you'll remember this, when Jeff Burgart was teaching mandolin. That neck joint was kind of I don't know, it wasn't a mortise and tenon. It was kind of a doweled dovetail. If you remember that, did you ever build one of those, Robbie? Well, you watched him, you filmed him.
Yeah, I put together the course with him. I hired Jeff years ago when I was still teaching at the college, and he came in and started teaching that mandolin course. Did a fantastic job. And so we filmed the mandolin video, instructional video for my website. But I don't remember what he was using that time at the college for the dove joint or for the neck joint.
It was kind of like, I'll call it a V joint.
Yeah.
Like a mortise that was, that, you know, kind of had a, vertically it was this shape.
Right.
And then the way he built his mandolins, the last thing to go on was the back. So after he glued the neck together, you flipped it over and you drilled two pilot holes that went through both sides of that V and glued dowels in. That's how he did it. Yeah. It was just, wow, you can do, it was just interesting to see what you could do.
Yeah.
And that's why I was curious about how you did it on the arch top.
Yeah.
What advice would you give if you've never built an arch top before? I was really interested in hearing what you had to say today, because that's something that I see out there on the horizon for me when I feel like putting in that kind of effort. What do you think the biggest thing to
Peter, I don't, at my skill level, I don't know that it's any more effort than learning to build any other kind of instrument. I don't know that it took more effort than building my first classical. Maybe some more manual effort, just the actual carving. But the instruction on the video, and again, here's the shameless plug, was spot on with what I experienced on the other videos Robbie has. Like I said, I'm a visual learner, so it's just really easy to go back and view those time and again and really hone in on what you need to do. A lot of the stuff translates in terms of getting the joints just right. A lot of the network, the carving the neck itself. I don't know that it's that different than doing a steel string. You're adapting some parts, but I don't know that it's I think it's basically it's just adopting the mindset. This is what I want to do, and then going out and doing it. It's like anything else, right?
Sure.
Gary, from what I heard you talk about, you might suggest for your first one you use a walnut back instead of a maple one. Although you say there are more tonal differences you could hear, but a little easier on your fingers for that first one.
Yeah, the walnut does carve a lot easier. It also bends easier. I found I had an easier time bending the figured walnut sides than I did the figured maple sides.
So what are you using for your sources for your wood? Because it's a little bit different than what most of us use, I think.
Yeah, so I knew you were going to ask me that question. I knew I needed to have it ready. The tops I get from a place up in Alaska Tone Woods. And the other one, the back and sides I've been getting from a guy up in Oregon. And again, it's somebody that I found through the Guild of American Luthiers. They just, on their latest issue, they have the advertising supplement, and he advertises in there. Starts with, I want to say Northern Tone Woods, but it's not Northern. Starts with an N though. And I can send it to Elaine after this, but I'll probably remember it about 3 o'clock this morning.
Robbie, would it be okay if we posted that in the link to?
Sure.
To this once we get it up, we just add a comment. Yeah.
It's Notable Woods is the name of the album.
Notable Woods,
Okay.
okay.
Notable.
Yeah.
Yeah. You said he was a real stickler and knew what he was doing and providing these archtop parts for you, correct?
No. What I said was he's a real old fashioned guy. He's he when I told him what I was my skill level and what I was after, he sent me a couple of photos of some pieces that he had that were available that he thought might be suitable, and gave me some pricing on it. And I told him which one I wanted, and did you want it to get credit card order? He says no, he doesn't do credit cards, so he would just send me the wood, and when I inspected it, if I liked it, I could send him a check.
So much for PayPal, huh?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's it. I mean, it's no there's no secret sauce, and it's not any more magical. I mean, it's really magical, but it's no more magical than building one of your steel strings or classicals. It's just a really cool. I love the look of it. I love the feel of it. I want to try to get, and I've been having difficulties finding plans for a 16-inch arch top. The 17s are they're pretty big, and so when you play one after half hour, I usually play them sitting down here, so it gets to be a lot holding your shoulder like that. So I want to try building a smaller one. I'm just kind of on a quest for 16-inch plans, but that's probably gonna be my next build.
Other questions?
All right.
Thank you, Gary.
Thank you.
Thank you. Really nice to
Gary.
Gary.
Yeah,
Hey,
thanks for telling us about them.
Hey, Gary,
Yes, sir.
to resize your current plans, do you have any place nearby that will print those plans, like from a file or whatever?
Yeah. I thought about that going to like.
They can shrink the plans by whatever percent you tell them.
Right, but then it's a question I'm not quite sure on scale length and on placement of the bridge and on neck angle. And so that's why, I just have to track down some Gibson plans or something like that that's got all that information contained within it.
Yeah, and maybe thickness too might not change even though the size changes on it. Peter, what would you think about that? Because you've built some different
But you're
guitars.
talking about width, right? 16 going from a 17-inch lower bout to a 16.
Yeah, but would you change the?
I don't know
the
why
thickness?
that changed the scale length. I mean, all you're doing is changing the size of the box. Even if you proportionally change it all around, you'd be moving. Since you've got the movable bridge on there, you'd probably be okay in terms of setting your scale length, even with a smaller box.
Would you leave the side thickness the same though? Or would you also scale it down?
I don't know. I mean, they're already. What is the side thickness on those guitars?
2.5 to 2 millimeters.
No, I'm talking about the width. I keep using the wrong term.
3 inches.
When you make it smaller, are you also going to make it narrower?
You can leave it thick too. And look some of those big jazz guitars. Or go, like I think Benedetto's got smaller bodies than big 17s.
Yeah, they do. I just, again, he sells the plans that you can get for his guitars are all the 17 inches.
Other questions? All right, I think we're done here.
That's perfect timing too, because I see 6:59. That's pretty good, Elaine. We're trying to keep these things right at an hour, and look, my clock just turned to 7 p.m. So way to go! So thank you, Elaine, for putting this together for us. Thank you, Gary, for participating,
Very nice.
and everybody else that came along for the ride here. We certainly appreciate it.
Thank you, Elaine, and thank you, Gary, and just keep building.
Yes, sir.
Yep, that's right. Thank you all.
Bye now.
Good night, everybody.
All right, good night, everybody, and we'll see everybody next month.
All right, Robbie. Thank you.
All right, bye-bye.